All right, guys, we're tracking Helene tonight. Thanks for coming by. If it's your first time, my name is Travis Roberts. I'm a former TV chief meteorologist. I've been out of the business for several years, but once you're a meteorologist, you're always a meteorologist. Nights like tonight, when we're tracking something so complex, I mean, look at these wind gust swaths that are showing up on the 3K NAM. Insanity. Triple digits all the way up to Macon into parts of Georgia. We could still see gusts over 90. This thing could still be a hurricane as it moves into central and north Georgia, finally getting down to a tropical storm. And now we've got the upslope flow here too, with that strong risk for some heavy rain, especially into the western Carolinas. We're going to talk all about that. Before we get too far, take a look at the warnings that we have out. Multiple hurricane warnings. We've even got tropical storm warnings as far north as Asheville, Charlotte, North Carolina, pretty much the entire state of South Carolina, and just a slew of hurricane and tropical storm warnings across the rest of Georgia, Florida, and Alabama. It's not looking good. This thing is going to rapidly move to the north. It's going to move faster, and it's not going to lose its strength. This kind of happened if you think about those really fast-moving storms like Hugo that move inland really quickly, and that's going to push those damaging winds in faster. Here's why we're going to see that. Our upper low back here, upper high building here off the coast, so everything here ridging now between these two, and in fact, this upper low here, if anything, is going to want to pull Helene a little bit to the west as it gets here close to the Big Bend of Florida. Deadly storm surge expected with this, could top 10 to 15 feet along the coast. And are we looking at a category 5? I'm telling you, I was listening to Joe Bastardi, some comments from him, and I could arguably see it possibly happening. Either way, don't get hung up on this, and here's why. This upper low back to the west, not only is this going to rotate around it, Helene is going to tug on the upper low too, and these two are going to phase together. When that happens, your wind field is just going to boom. It's going to explode. It's going to get bigger and wider. So even if you're not near the center of circulation here or the exact eye of the storm, these winds will be damaging in a widespread area. Now everything phases together. We lose the tropical characteristics as we head into Friday night and Saturday, and this thing goes extra tropical. But let me just say something out front. I've been looking at these models this evening, and this is downright, and I do not try to fearmonger. I promise it's the last thing I want to do, but this is a dangerous situation for the Big Bend of Florida, southern Georgia, parts of northern Florida, and not just southern Georgia, middle Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. I would argue parts of Alabama, Tennessee, especially the mountains of Tennessee and North Carolina and South Carolina, and then into parts of Southwest Virginia. These are wind gusts here that we're looking at. I want to show you the wind gust swath because I think that is interesting to look at too. Now, this is a 3K NAM. Let's get even a little closer here. This would be the highest wind gust. So are we looking at close to 145 here at the coast? Maybe so, according to the latest NAM model. I'm going to take you back 12 hours and show you the 12Z run, which arguably was stronger. These are the highest wind gusts. We could see hurricane gusts as far east, maybe as Augusta. I don't know if it gets to Savannah, but maybe. And then onshore flow here, tornado risk is going up here too on the eastern side of this. That's where the strongest winds will be, on the east side of this storm. That's why you've got tropical storm warnings for South Carolina and a good chunk of North Carolina too. These winds will continue to go to the north, but they'll start to weaken, but we're still talking about tropical storm force wind gusts possible into parts of western North Carolina, maybe even as far east as Charlotte, Statesville, north up along I-77 somewhere here, and really west of that. I think that's where the strongest winds will be. But look, we're still talking wind gusts 50, 40 miles an hour or better into the Piedmont from Greensboro over to Roanoke. And then once you get west of Roanoke into Southwest Virginia, look at these numbers here, 60, maybe even gusting as high as 70 to 80. And then that wind will continue into parts of Kentucky. You see the highest wind gust moving this way as our storm gets pulled back to the west with our upper low. Now, if you're watching in Florida, I've had some folks ask about southern Florida. I mean, the highest wind gusts clearly are going to be on the east side. We're also going to get that onshore flow. So storm surge will be an issue on the east side of this storm, and of course near the center of the storm as we move into Thursday and Friday. So not a good situation. A quick look at a couple of model runs. I want to show you the GFS, the 18Z run. I'm not going to get hung up on the exact track here because, again, this thing is going to be a monster even once it moves inland, so those impacts will continue. Let's look at the spaghetti plots. In fact, some would argue it might be a little bit further west. Earlier today, those model runs were a little more like this, but the operational runs from today have been pretty consistent on keeping this thing in a similar area. And I don't care where it goes, really. I mean, if it goes west by maybe even 50 more miles, it doesn't really matter because that upslope component is still going to be here into the mountains, squeezing out a foot of rain, maybe even higher amounts, up to 16 inches. It's raining now in these areas too. This is the rain that's falling now on top of what we're going to get. So flash flooding, landslides likely, and this is going to be a huge tornado day. Decent risk of tornadoes as we head into day 2. This would be for Thursday. Heading into Friday, that tornado risk is now going to shift to the north. So now we're looking at North South Carolina, Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee. That will be the worst for you guys on Friday. Here's our front. We've got our rain going here, right? That's not what you want to see interacting here. And I think that our hurricane is going to want to follow this front pretty much. Your upper low back here spinning. If anything, this might be moving a little bit to the west. Here comes the center of circulation now across the Gulf of Mexico, continuing to get stronger and stronger. And we've already got the rain going here. You've got an easterly fetch here into the Carolinas, into Georgia, and just piling that moisture here up against the mountains and down into Georgia, even Alabama. Flash flooding looking likely. This could be a significant weather event. It might be one for the books, okay? This will be one I think that we remember, especially if this thing gets as strong as it looks like. Either way, look at all this moisture. It doesn't even matter. We're still getting the moisture. Even if we just had the upper low and the high here, you'd be getting the front and the heavy moisture. And now you're throwing a hurricane into it that could be a Cat 4, maybe a 5. Oh my gosh. Okay, so timing this out, here we are. The worst for Georgia, Florida looks like it's going to be over with as we move into the early morning hours of Friday for southern Georgia and Florida, that is. But now we've got our eye moving very close to Atlanta, still probably holding on to tropical storm status by Friday morning. The worst for Charlotte into North Carolina, up into Virginia, and even into East Tennessee looks to be sometime early Friday morning. Also for the rest of Tennessee, too. We've got some heavy rain bands here, but the strongest winds, I've said this, are going to be on the east side. That will be the biggest problem right in here. It's still going to be windy. We're still clearly getting a lot of rain here on the west side. These feeder bands, too, right here into parts of South Carolina, North Carolina, that will lead to tornadoes through Friday morning, maybe even as far south as South Carolina and Georgia lingering as these bands set up. And now, again, that upslope flow continues to just push the rain into the mountains. Now, once you get west of the mountains, your rain totals may be a little lower here because of the downsloping flow. That may actually eat into some of the rain totals with a bit of a rain shadow effect from the Tri-Cities down to Knoxville, down to Chattanooga. But your center of circulation probably going through here somewhere, which will add up. And then, again, from Boone to Asheville, so all of these areas here, all the way down into northern Georgia and the upstate of South Carolina. Think about it, guys. I mean, this is all, boom, right in here. You start to move uphill, so to speak. So from Greensboro, Winston-Salem, down to Charlotte, down to Greenville, Spartanburg, Rome, Athens. You go north of that, you start heading uphill. So we're just going to continue to get that orographic lifting going on here, squeezing out the rain and just causing huge problems. And another thing that I see is this thing could move back to the west and meander and just keep rain showers going here. Although the risk looks a little lower the further west this thing goes, and it continues to just fall apart and weaken. Beyond that, jet stream up here, that's the real driving force. We finally get a trough that'll swing through sometime, I think, around Tuesday or Wednesday that will end up lifting this moisture out. And then we may be looking at more tropical weather heading into next week. Very active. And look at this cold air trying to move into toward the end of next week. A wild setup. All right. That's your update tonight. More to come tomorrow. Make sure you come back and subscribe. Be safe, guys. I'm praying for you. Please take these warnings serious. All right. Be safe. Weather.gov. Get the latest from them on. And of course, if you're in a danger area, please listen to emergency evacuation orders and just get out when you can.